Hello and welcome to another episode. My name is Ross.
And I'm Craig.
And it's time to put the kettle on because it's tea time. Something about that slurp makes you want to have another cup, another sip, doesn't it?
It does. I bought myself some PG tips bags as well. I'm enjoying them. I haven't had PG in a while.
I'm on the oat milk today.
Oat milk.
Not as good. Not as good as cashew. I'm going to be honest.
No?
Borderline, nah.
I mean, the price difference would tell you that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the only reason I bought oat milk was because I didn't have any cashew left on the shelf. But let's start with some news, shall we?
Yeah, what's in today's news, Ross?
Well, let me tell you, Craig. First of all, The Sun is reporting that the Chancellor Rishi Sunak is considering a 5 pence per litre increase in fuel duty, which will end the near 10-year, decade-long freeze on fuel duty, which will be no doubt unpopular, but it is another little win for the old electric powertrain.
It is, and just one bit of caveat with that. I've heard a lot of people saying that tax increases are going to happen, and that good old Dishy Rishi is deciding which ones to pull out and ones to keep. So half of these things may not happen, but the October statement, we'll find out.
That's one for people to enjoy, look forward to. Plastic bags might be doubling in price to 10 pence, so says Defra. Apparently making them 5 pence led to supermarkets reporting a 95% drop in plastic bag usage, and it removed billions of plastic bags from circulation. So, hey, if you're going to spend 5p, why not make it 10?
Yeah, and just the thing with that news too, it's England only. Wales and Scotland are not on that train yet.
Yeah, come on, catch up.
We did the bag thing first, though. You guys, you took 3 years to get the bags on.
That's probably why we're trying to reclaim the profits that we could have got if we'd done it when you did it. In other news, Amazon clearly can't be bothered to wait until Rivian have built a truck. So they have ordered 1,800 electric Merc vans for Europe.
Nice.
They're invested in Rivian.
I don't know.
So you know who Rivian is?
No.
Rivian make electric trucks, but they're a startup, so they've not really although they've got a model that you can see, they're not in production. Amazon then invested loads of money in it. People partly thought that because of the feud between Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, that he's sort of trying to compete because they like to compete. So yeah, all that money went into Rivian, but not much has been heard from Rivian, really. Since then. So, but they'll see we're looking to do that for their delivery trucks, but they're not waiting, at least not for Europe anyway. They are going ahead with buying some Merc vans that are already available.
Ah, okay. Bit slap in the face there.
Well, a little bit.
Like Amazon are absolutely loaded, and during the pandemic, I imagine they've doubled up. I mean, Jeff is obviously the richest person in the world by far, and yeah, why didn't they just buy Rivian rather than invest? Don't
know. In other news, which this is stupid news to be honest, but I wanted to talk about because sometimes I like to highlight the stupid stuff. So Seat has apparently enlisted kids to redesign EV chargers because apparently they're an eyesore.
Okay. All right, Seat. What have you got? What's Seat got involved in this for?
So they did, obviously, I fully support getting kids involved with any project, especially with EV technology. But what the hell, right? So they did a survey of 2,000 British divs. Sorry, I meant drivers. And the older generation said that they didn't like the look of them. This is like the over 50s. And so Seat thought they would tackle this problem So they've got a bunch of kids to decorate them, and I'll show a picture there. Boom. Basically, what they've done is they've graffitied the little things in, I don't know, I think in a way that people are going to think it's even worse than it was before, frankly. I don't want to have a go at the kids for bad artwork or anything, but it just looks like a bunch of doodles on an otherwise beautifully white structure.
So I haven't seen this image, so people listening or people watching on YouTube, then people on YouTube obviously will see that. But I can already imagine what it's going to look like. Kind of like those go slow signs that kids design, which makes sense because you want to go slow and not kill kids on the road. But when you got a bunch of boomers who don't like the look of EV chargers, probably the same people who don't like wind turbines, and now we can have kids, the opposite of them, design them. Yeah, I agree. Then gonna like it even less.
I'm not quite sure what the go slow things are, but I'm not even sure it's that good. Imagine for you, Craig, and for anyone on the podcast, imagine a fridge where you've put your kids' artwork on it. And that's what it looks like. It just looks like someone scribbled on it. So, yeah, well done, Tia. Good job. Excellent survey. Oh, and then the survey said, if we made them look better, would you like it? 10% said yes.
Yeah, worthwhile project. Good job, Sia. High five. So why Sia? What have they got to do with electric chargers? Do they even have electric cars in the market?
I think they just felt left out, perhaps, and they felt like they should do something, and they weren't prepared to actually make a car or something. So they thought they would tackle the EV. I don't know, but it's like I don't even know how I made news, and I've made it worse by making it news for you. But it's just so stupid that I thought I'd talk about it. What news have you got, Greg?
Yeah, good news. The other piece of news, the first piece of news is kind of more of a chat. Anyone interested in this type of stuff has probably already seen it, or at least watched the live stream of Elon Musk's demonstration of Neuralink and the brain stimulation technology and how it worked in a pig's head. Yes. So you watched this too on the live stream. It was fairly late on last Friday, 11 p.m. BST. But yeah, honest opinion, very boring. Very boring. I was expecting more. I feel Elon has overhyped what this thing is.
Did he hype it at all?
Oh, he was. Yeah. Did you not listen to him on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about how you can stream music directly into your mind and how you can speak Mandarin by impacting the synapses link? And you say, "Hello, my name is Craig," and your lips will literally say it in Mandarin. I mean, he said a lot of stuff, and all they kind of showed was 1,000 points on a pig's brain and how they could effectively make pig music out of sniffing.
Yes. Okay. I agree that what they've done so far is mildly interesting at this point. I don't think, in his defense, I don't think he ever said that we're capable of doing stuff now, but that's the future potential. The whole point of the stream was a recruitment exercise. They quite clearly said that is why they're doing it. It's to get people go, oh, that's interesting, and then want to go and sign up to work. But so yes, I don't think he ever claimed that it would be able to do that now.
Fair enough. I did think you would come to Elon's aid, and I did actually go and have a look to see what jobs were available, and it's quite disheartened to find that they're all available not in the UK and primarily in Fremont, California.
Yeah.
So they're very much localized.
Yeah.
So no UK news.
A long time ago now, there was a TED talk that I watched, and I don't know if you remember, we were talking to you about this, not on the podcast, but where someone had made a T-shirt, and they had little buzzers, basically, little tiny vibration devices in the T-shirt, and then they fed through data into the array of buzzers on the back of the T-shirt, and then so you could feel what that data was, if you see what I mean. So you couldn't see the data, you wouldn't have it, but you'd have a physical feeling of what that was. And what they're doing with Neuralink is kind of like the next level up from that, where they've instead of finding a part of your body to send that input to, they are exploring what will eventually be sending signals directly into your brain.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, definitely. He showed the possibility of read and write to the brain, which definitely very interesting. And the machine they used to do the actual surgery to implant over 1,000 electrodes into various parts of the brain was amazing. And especially how it dodged all the blood vessels, capillaries, and you just don't bleed because it dodged everything and it checks them perfectly. Yeah, amazing. He did joke about maybe he had one himself, and I think that would have been a very cool demo. He just took his wig off or something, and like, bang, there it is. I started like fluently speaking in Mandarin or something. Some language he doesn't know. He may already know Mandarin. I don't know. Or if the pig spoke French, I mean, that would have been amazing.
That would have been amazing. Yeah, I think you definitely would have got funding if you managed that. Admittedly, if I was thinking about what they were going to do before they did it, I was imagining that maybe someone had one of these things and they could control turning something on and off, even that basic. But yes, obviously they hadn't put it into a human. I should have realized that. Yeah, I just put it to pig. But yeah, admittedly, having it so that it just essentially was picking up. It said it's like picking up brain activity from the nose, but it literally was picking up the fact that neurons were firing when sniffing. That was
while the pig was excited, basically. I did seem to call it as he was sniffing food. What was the pig's name again? Gertrude, I think. But yeah, it seemed like a really cool thing. It was a really cool comment because he opened up a live Q&A. My question in that Q&A was, how do you charge this thing? Because it only has a 1-day battery life. I can't imagine plugging a USB-C into my head when I go to sleep. It kind of feels a bit weird. Do I take it out and put on the side of my dressing table?
Yeah.
Don't know. If I'm using it for disability reasons, what happens then? Do I just collapse? But like, turn back into jelly or something? I have no idea. There's lots and lots of questions, and I think their Q&A was also fairly weak. It didn't answer really hard-hitting questions. Like, there was lots of questions on what happens if this thing gets hacked. Like, pacemakers can get hacked.
Yeah.
And there's
hard-hitting enough for you.
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff I think should have been covered. And I think a lot of guys on the panel, they weren't very good at public speaking, and they were very nervous, understandably so. But
Elon very good at public speaking, so
No, but he somehow pulls it off. He's got
he's got a lot of fans in the room, so he says something remotely funny, and everyone laughs, and then it's all fine.
Yeah. But there was a guy, one of the software engineering guys, and I don't know what he was talking about, but he went off on one talking about and how he solved this problem. It's like, well, that wasn't the question. Stick to the question, fella. But yeah, there's lots of questions I don't think were answered.
You want to work with this guy? Sign up today. Yeah. Well, yeah, it was interesting, but yeah, not exactly. It didn't have the wow factor. It wasn't a sign.
No, I need to see more. I mean, even if they showed us that robot put in the chip in the pig's brain, if they were that confident it's pretty safe, chuck another one in Gertrude and find out. Do it live.
Yeah,
that would be amazing.
I was wondering how many you would need to properly better read everything, because presumably you can only read within a radius of, well, I thought from what I understood, you can only read within a radius of wherever the chip is.
Yes, I think what he showed was that it could be the actual electrode wires can be up to 20 centimeters, I think he said, and they can be injected. There's only 1,000 of them. It's got a maximum of 1,000, 1,024, I think. Yeah. And that's its capacity. But the second pig did have 2 of them in, so it had 2,000, but that wasn't demoed. That pig was kind of shown as this guy's got 2 in, and he was kind of marched off stage. Don't know. I mean, one of the good questions on Twitter was actually, could you show us the pile of pig bodies it took to get to this point? Because there must have been quite a lot of failure before this point, which is why the FDA has only now approved human trials. But human trials are on the way soon. I would like to see. But the next demo, I hope, is something really cool.
Let's hope.
I'm not sure how cool it can be, but yeah, Blow our minds, Elon. Anyway,
Literally.
yeah. My other piece of news is very UK focused, and it's a completely different version of transport. I mean, I've never considered. Maybe you haven't either. Maybe no one has, except these guys who are a company based in Bedford who've designed a HAV, which basically is an eco-friendly airship, like a Zeppelin.
Okay.
And they're proposing this as a new mode of eco-friendly travel that isn't air, isn't rail, isn't cars. So you're going back to Zeppelin times, where you're kind of floating about, getting from A to B. And they've got a 1.6 million funding boost to bring the Zeppelin back to the skies.
Interesting. How are they? So how is this thing powered?
Electric motors. So, but basically, I suppose I'm not sure what the gas is, but is it whatever it is? Obviously very flammable, but that keeps it buoyant enough to float. It just takes a really low energy propulsion to move around.
I mean, the big flammable gas up in a big balloon thing is usually what scares most people.
Yeah, isn't it? Was it the Nuremberg accident where it kind of just exploded in the 30s?
Nuremberg or Hindenburg?
Yeah, one of them.
Like I always get that with like Nürburgring. Anyway, whatever it's called.
That horrible accident that happened about 100 years ago.
Yeah, which is generally what put people off, I think. But then I guess in theory, well, I don't know. Maybe there is a way. It feels like there should be a way of having a non-flammable gas in the thing, and then using electric pumps and propellers or whatever to guide it around.
Yeah, I'm not sure in the actual specifications. I think they're just in the process of actually building this thing, but it claims 90% fewer emissions than typical air travel, which I think is believable.
Yeah.
But it also reports you can get it faster.
Wow.
Now that I'm not sure on. Surely you're not going to beat a jet. Maybe over short distance travels. Like for example, Cardiff to Edinburgh. That's about a 40-minute plane ride because it's 20 minutes up, 20 minutes down. So only really 20 minutes across the country. Whereas the Zeppelin doesn't really go up and down so hard, I suppose. You can just get there in about 20 minutes. So arguably, short distances could be quicker. But I don't imagine going across the Pacific in this thing.
No.
But yeah, this is to be seen. And with this new funding, they are going to build the second generation of the airship. And it's expected by 2030.
Right.
In our skies by 2030. And will be entirely electric powered, emissions free. And yeah, coming to the sky near you soon.
I'm gonna have to Google this after the show.
I mean, yeah, got a news article. Definitely. There's no action. It does, yeah.
We'll put the picture up now.
Picture here for the YouTube guys. Unfortunately for podcasts, check the link in the show notes and you'll be able to see where it is. Really, really cool. There's a full visual of the cabin too. There's lots of stuff here on the news article. Check it out.
All right, we'll do.
Next piece of news, very, very light, is a new car manufacturer has entered the EV arena.
Surely not another one, Craig.
We know it's not Seat because they're pissing about with the electric chargers. It's Skoda.
Which?
Yeah, so they brought in a Enyaq. 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 Whatever. I mean, the fact I can't really say it properly is a problem.
Yeah, right, okay.
It's their new electric vehicle, and it comes in two battery capacities, 62 kilowatt hours and 82 kilowatt hours. So just different sizes.
Yeah. And
yeah, they claim a range of roughly 240 miles, which kind of makes it all right, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, that's good enough at that point.
Yeah, that's the 62 kilowatt battery hour. The 81 has a 316 miles estimated range.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings into a nice sort of target market. It uses the CCS connector, fast charging. So it's going with standards.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it comes with rear-wheel drive, four-drive variant. It's an SUV as well, which I think is very fashionable these days.
Yeah, go with the biggest model first.
And it goes on sale next year.
So who made this?
Skoda. Did we
Skoda?
miss that part? Yeah, Skoda.
Skoda's Enyaq.
Enyaq.
What's that?
Yeah, I don't know.
They should just
Enyaq. Enyaq. I don't know.
They should just copy VW. Just call it the Skoda One or something.
Yeah, or just an Skoda, Skoda E, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's coming next year. So if you can't wait for your Tesla, I mean, Skoda's up there for you. Purported similar battery ranges.
Yeah, but does it have over-the-air updates? Can you summon the car? Can I play games?
Well, no, it's a Skoda.
Can it self-drive?
If you're lucky, it might have a Bluetooth radio.
Yeah, I might stick as I am.
Yeah, but let's leave Skoda alone. I think they're doing a good job of bringing the electric car to the market. And yeah, I mean, the list of manufacturers who don't have an electric car must be pretty small now. You know, so
yeah, they've all got something in the pipe. So was this an announcement of we will be start producing them this in that point, or they will be actually?
This is launching next year. They've completely demoed it this week and they're saying this is what we're going to launch next year. This is our brand new car that's coming out for you to buy.
Oh, all right. Cool. Well,
yeah. And my final piece of news is just a kind of tongue-in-cheek thing about the UK's best and worst places to own an electric vehicle.
I'm gonna have to put. I live in Dorset and Somerset area, and that's a nightmare most of the time. But I'm guessing we're not the worst.
No. I'll give you a clue. There's only 34 they've ranked. Can you have a guess who number one is? Top of your head.
Cornwall.
Yeah, they're not on the top or bottom. They're kind of in the middle somewhere. Cornwall, though. Weird.
Well, I just thought, there's lots of countryside down there. I mean, if it's anything like Dorset, they can't be bothered. But
well, the question was, which is the best?
Oh, sorry. Definitely not. I was going for the worst for Cornwall. The best, I would probably say, is London.
I would have thought London too, but London's number 3. There are 2 cities better than London.
Well, let's go with Bristol or Cardiff then.
Cardiff isn't there. Cardiff's actually quite poor. Bristol is 8. Number 1 is Milton Keynes.
Really?
Number 2 is Coventry.
Okay.
Number 4 and 5, just the top. Number 3 is London. Number 4 and 5 is Portsmouth and Nottingham.
Yeah, never would have got them.
I
don't live anywhere near any of those, so I've not been to them to know. But
I mean, Milton Keynes must be amazing. Must be the number 1 place. But yeah, what would you say is the worst? I'll give you a clue. It's a Welsh city, and isn't the one you mentioned.
Is it therefore? What's the other one? Newport. Is that what I want to say? Swansea.
Oh, which one are you going with? I'll help you. The Newport is also a city. There are 3 cities in Wales.
I'm going to go with Newport.
Oh, should have stuck with Swansea. Swansea is the worst.
I could have sworn I wasn't that far from Swansea recently, and I thought they had some, so I thought it was all right.
I mean, they have some. Like, I'm living in Bridgend. We have some superchargers with Tesla up on the services. But, yeah. No, Swansea, worst.
Excellent. So, yes.
That's all the news I have. What's today's chat?
Today's chat, Craig, is about tiny houses. Are you familiar with the concept?
I think I am. I don't know a great deal, but I know the rough sort of thing. Are we including like camper vans and stuff in what you would class as a tiny house?
Well, no, technically. a tiny house is mobile, but I think then the definition doesn't necessarily include camper vans, because it's permanent living, whereas typically a camper van you only use temporarily. You won't typically live in it.
Caravan?
Static caravan is in terms of the floor space is in the region, yes.
Okay.
It's a mostly a big movement, very popular in the US and in Australia. In the UK, very much still a new thing. There isn't much going on around here, but it is definitely increasing. So go back to what a tiny house is. As you'd expect, it's a fully fledged house. It's your lounge, it's a kitchen, it's a bedroom, it's a bathroom, it's everything. It's just that it's in a much smaller space. How small? Well, they can vary. Obviously, there is a sort of defined range, and it's anything between about 12 and 36 square meters, which look like you're trying to work that out. So if to help you imagine it, the smallest would be basically the size of the average UK car parking space.
Say like a shipping container.
Shipping containers are bigger, usually, than that. But, yeah, so the smallest one is about the size of a car parking space, and then the larger ones would be equivalent to the size of either 3 parking spaces.
3 car parking spaces.
Yeah, or a static caravan, or as you say, a shipping container. That sort of size. And yeah, so that's what a tiny house physically is. But if you ask Wikipedia to sort of explain the movement of it, it's a movement that promotes financial prudence, economically safe shared community experiences, and you'll like this one, Craig, a shift in consumerism-driven mindsets. Away from consumerism.
So what? Less space, less things.
Exactly. So why might you want to live in one? Well, so Tony Homes. What's a Tony home? We'll come back to that. Maybe just next week.
Is that not a bloke?
It's just a tiny home living by Tony. Anyway, it tends to be about sustainable living, getting rid of possessions, living simpler, getting back to nature, reasons like that. But there are also some other basic benefits that are attracting more people to the movement. And the most obvious one is price.
Yeah.
So the average home in the UK costs about £260,000. Maybe not the average in the Wales, but the average in the whole of the UK.
I was going to say, if you exclude London, I bet that number comes down a lot.
Yeah, probably. But it's, yeah, so let's say it's just a tiny, so there's a company called Tiny Eco Homes UK, they're based in the north. And they create already pre-built ones for as little as £26,000.
That's pretty cool.
Right, so if you look at it this way, it's brilliant. The cost of the whole home is the same price as you would put as a deposit for an average size home. If you have a 10% deposit on your £200,000 house, with that deposit, you could just go buy a tiny house. So yeah, that's basically, it's a complete paradigm shift to a different way of us developing our lives to the point of owning your own. So if you're young and your plan might be to work for a few years, build up some savings for a deposit, and then spend the next 35 years paying off that mortgage. So find a flat for, in my case, I bought one for 180,000. I think the first flat I got was, obviously not in London, and I put 10% deposit down, and then I got a quite comfortable monthly payment, so I could, be sure I could do it. But then over the full term of that mortgage, because the way mortgage works, you end up spending something like 300 or something, up to 300,000, 250, 300 for the, depending on how long the mortgage was and what interest rate you got and stuff. But that is you can easily spend an extra £100,000 trying to pay off your house over the course of the lifetime. Or, as I said, you can take the same deposit, same monthly payment on a much, much smaller loan, and you can pay that house off within a few years. And the other thing is, I haven't lived anywhere for longer than about 3 years, I think. I keep moving around, and I've always had an issue with buying. Whenever trying to buy properties, I was always worried that, is this really the house I want to live in forever? Because I'm expecting circumstances to change. And obviously, if you're young, you're thinking, I'm going to settle down with someone, I'm going to have children. I might want to move somewhere for work or whatever, and you can't. It's difficult to imagine yourself buying a house in a place, staying there. So this kind of like potentially sort of changes all that. So instead of needing to know what your life's going to be like in 3 to 5 years, in 3 to 5 years you would have paid off the house, and then you have a house that you can either sell on. Currently, the market for, well, there isn't a market at the moment for used tiny houses, as it's only just got to the UK. But in theory, there might be other people that would be interested in buying your house, or you could just take it with you, or you could potentially extend it depending on what sort of house you got, and then make a bigger house. But it's kind of it's a complete paradigm shift of how you deal with it.
So there's a question there if we move to the next point. I find it very appealing. I would love to live in something like this. Maybe invest in some land and just live on the land with a small, tiny house. Yeah. My issue has always been, how is it seen, especially maybe from the UK perspective, as an investment? Cars are classed as depreciating assets. You'll never get your money back. Houses are appreciating assets, so you can get your money back and more. Yeah. A tiny house kind of fits in between a house and a car. Does it depreciate or does it appreciate? Where do you get your money back?
Well, the truth is we don't really know because the market doesn't exist at this moment in time. But I would put it in the depreciation category personally, because it's not. I think the appreciation element more comes from the land than it does necessarily the house itself.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
So yeah, I've described the scenario for the young person starting out, but I was trying to think, well, I would like to do this. You said you would like to do this. Other people I know would like to do this, and we're not talking people who have just left school and that sort of stuff. So, does it work for people who are a bit older or are, different stages of their life? So maybe you already have a child, whatever. Maybe you're currently paying rent and you'd rather not be. Does it work then? So I was looking into that, and first of all, unfortunately, a mortgage is very, very unlikely. Very unlikely that anyone will give you a mortgage for this, and that's largely down to the fact that when you buy a house, as we just talked about, you buy the land. So it's always connected to the land registry, and that's how you get the mortgage, because that's how they assess the value of the property. Can't do that if it's on a trailer or if it's just the actual building itself. So you probably won't get a mortgage from it. You probably could get a personal loan, because it's in that sort of about 25,000 area, which is usually the top end of what you can borrow from a bank. And that company, Tiny Eco Homes UK, does work with a finance company called Pegasus Finance.
Cool.
They have a horrible rate of 8%, so I probably would look around. But even if you took that option, you could be paying, say, £650 a month, about 4 years, and you'd have it fully paid off for their basic level of house.
A good way as well would be to go along with the FIRE movement is to utilize credit cards, because you could typically get a 20k allowance from a credit card quite easily, because they kind of give them out, and it'll be high, stupid percentages, but then you transfer them to 0% cards over time. So eventually you'd be paying off on a 0% APR. I know, like, for example, Sainsbury's and Marks and Spencer's, they give you 2 to 3 years, 0% APR. And they're very good on the credit rankings. As long as you've got an average to good credit rating, 0% credit card could be a way to do this.
Yeah, good idea. So then I was trying to think about whether to go further than that. What if you're on universal credit? What if you're really stuck in that loop? Is there a way of using a tiny house to get out of that situation? So I looked into that a little bit, and the first major problem is that you cannot use universal credit to cover a personal loan repayment. So that's the first issue.
Okay.
So
would you even get a loan on universal credit? I assume you'd fail the criteria.
You might well do, yeah. But there's no point doing it anyway, because you wouldn't be able to. You'd have to pay it back some other way, which you wouldn't be able to do without saying that you're earning more. It's kind of a non-starter, really. But basically then the cheapest way to do that would be, you can buy a house for 25,000 already made, or you can get a kit, and the kit costs about 6,500. But you'd have to build it yourself. You have to have the skills to do that. But in theory, if you could put together that level of savings over time and to better buy that, then, or I don't even know whether the credit card would work in your scenario if you've got, whatever. But you'd have to go to some lengths to actually buy the kit, make it yourself, and then transition to it slowly. What you can use universal credit for, interestingly, is you can use it as to pay the rent of the ground rent.
Ah, cool.
Have the house, and it's then on a piece of land that you have to pay rent for. You can use it to cover that. So you were to find an open-minded, entrepreneurial local landowner who would I don't suggest anything illegal, but there might be ways of using that ground rent to enable you to pay that value of that property off over a period of time.
What's the rules on planning permission and stuff? Can you just do that? Can you just build it anyway, or do you need to go through quite a lengthy process?
It depends on if it's on your own. If it's on your, like, so if you build it in someone's garden or something, then basically no, you don't need any, because I think it's supposed to be. You might have to sort of be slightly clever with it, in the sense that it's supposed to be used as a something that the main household can use. So there's some issues there, but so no, you don't need planning permission to build it, but it's more about where you're gonna put it is more the issue. So it's just going to depend on the terms of the land that you have. But as long as you find land, then you should be fine. And obviously, as long as you can find land that has residential purpose, then you can use it. So,
or you can risk it, have it for 7 years, and then you're fine.
So the other main reason for wanting to go to these things is the sort of desire to live off grid. And tiny homes present a kind of cool, because they're small, because you living in a much smaller space, the amount of energy needed to keep them going is reduced. You've got one room ultimately to heat. So people tend to have a solar array either on top of the house itself, or actually seems to be more common to actually have it to the side in the best spot on the ground. So you use electricity purely to power the house, and then a lot of people seem to have wood burners inside for the sort of winter dealing with needing extra heat, because it's just an efficient way of doing it. Obviously, you want a source of wood and that sort of stuff, and that again depends on the land that you've got. if you're trying to sort of live off the land a little bit, then if you've got a local supply of wood, then that would be the obvious thing to do. Probably the biggest issue is water. To have like a proper underground tank to store rainwater, whatever, does seem to be quite costly. I've seen prices up to £10,000 for that alone. So that part seems to be complicated. But there are sort of like intermediary. If you've got a water source, you've got a local river, or whatever, you can go collect it and then just deal with the purification of the water, or you can collect rainwater and just do it in a slightly more manual way to start with. That's the kind of thing I like about tiny homes the most, is it's sort of like it's something that you upgrade. You can start quite small. You don't have to just have to buy the whole house like we normally do with everything already plumbed in, all that sort of stuff. You can go, right, well, I only have 20,000. So I'm going to, maybe if I've got the skills, I'm going to start the kit and I'll get that going. And maybe I'll find like a park home equivalent place where I can actually just house the house. I can plug it in. And then once you've done that for a couple of years, maybe you move to and maybe you buy some land. You can add that on. That's a new asset that you've got in. So now I've bought the land and I own the house and I'm done. I own everything. But now I add on a solar array, or now I add on a water system, or whatever, and you can just sort of build on it. And I like that, because I can see that as your life progresses, you can sort of just keep reinvesting into the house, and at every given point, you own everything. You're not.
I like that too. Yeah.
Obviously, the biggest issue probably is literally whether can you live in that space? Can you live in something so small that it is largely just one room? They're quite so going to the or even the smallest one, 2.4 meters usually by 4.8, that sort of area, which is the size of the car parking space. They often build them quite tall so that they can have a mezzanine, and then they just sleep on the top half, if you like. So you've got your lounge area. You've then got immediately into like your kitchen and your bathroom on the ground floor. Bathroom is quite often like under the stairs. The stairs are box storage, so like literally not an inch is wasted. Like I was watching one of the YouTube videos from a series which I'll come back to in a minute, and the girl was saying that she'd even thought about the fact that when you, sorry to go put this as a topic, but when you go to the toilet, people don't tend to sit on the toilet, sit back and sort of in a relaxed sort of position. They tend to sit forward, and she thought, well, that's a perfect thing to put directly under the stairs, because you don't really need that behind there. So it's literally I'll perch on the end, and that's, and by the way, toilets are usually compost toilets, so you don't have plumbing because it saves money, and compost toilets are not as bad as you might think. But yeah, literally every single inch of space, every time there's you have a table, it's a table that lifts up and has storage underneath. If there's a chair, it's got sliding cupboards underneath it. Every single inch is used, but you don't have any stuff, and it's all actually it's compact, but it's not necessarily terrible.
No, I mean, I like the challenge of that too, trying to get everything as functional as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see maybe that'd be very hard. If you had open space around you, you didn't spend all your time in the house, I think that'd be good. Yes. So if you just lived in this, you just slept in it, did some work in it perhaps, but otherwise you're outside in the open land. Yeah, I think that'd be perfectly okay.
Yeah, and you can probably wouldn't be you put an awning or something so that you can still be outside even when it's raining or that sort of thing. Yeah, I think if I'm being honest, the hardest part to imagine is having children in there for the noise.
Yeah, I don't see that.
That would always be the problem of going, having nowhere to escape to when it's too noisy. Now maybe you've just got better tolerance. Maybe it's just because I'm a bloke or something. I don't know. I would struggle with that. I'm not struggling with them anyway, but I would struggle with not being able to have a door that I can just go You know, but peace.
Noise cancelling headphones. that's all you'll have.
Not a bad idea. Yes.
What's that, kid? You hungry? Give me an hour.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really cool, and it kind of makes me think of smaller places like Sweden and Amsterdam, where they have really small, compact apartments, and that's the entire point of IKEA, to be as efficient or as small as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, people must live this way in an ordinary world.
I can't remember what it was, but I remember seeing. I feel like it was in New York or something. But there was a house somewhere where it was you walked in the door and there was literally nothing. It was literally just an open, in like a small hallway, because everything was behind a cupboard door or a drawer or something. Everything. So like even he had a full length bed, but he'd have to pull out a drawer, and then he'd have to unravel the thing, and then he'd put the pillows on, and then that was it. And that was so. Then his bedroom was then quite a reasonably sized bedroom. But then when he woke up, he'd have to ravel that back up, and then he could open the doors and pull out the kitchen, and then it just became the kitchen thing. Or he could have we could probably fit that and a table, and then so we could have people around. So literally everything would slide away and everything would come out. It was very cool. Very cool.
That's very cool.
I mean, you would feel like you're in some sort of padded room for most of the time. Well, not. I guess you would never have it in padded room state, would you? But it'd always be one or the other. But
yeah, probably worth not, just in case. But yeah. So the videos you've seen and the research you've done into tiny homes, what would you say is typically the gender mix? Because I feel maybe this fits more of a male fantasy, perhaps, of being small, functional, closed off, and ideally just functional. I mean, I don't imagine it being very good to look at. It's not going to be very aesthetic. And maybe it's up to you to think that that's a male thing, perhaps. Obviously, different people, different things, but who would you say typically would want to live this way?
There's not so much for the tiny ones, but the bigger of the tiny houses. Quite often a couple. Quite often, a young couple. But I watched the one. There was one. So the YouTube channel that I saw before today's research, but I'm just going to reference it because it's probably the best one. Is a series called "Living Big in a Tiny House." And the guy that sort of presents it, I think he's Australian, because that's where it all sort of started, and he just sort of travels around the world doing these things. But he did one in, I think it was January of this year, and he met a girl in Herefordshire, I think it was, called Flo, and she was basically a 25-year-old girl who had been doing woodwork and bakery and stuff in her life anyway, and then she decided one day that she was going to build this house. Now, she had access to wood from her dad, and she managed to have a friend who had farmland that she could move into. So, she had, she was lucky, and she also had a cousin that would help her build the thing. So she had resources available to her, but ultimately, she still, blood, sweat, and tears, and built the house. But yeah, so I guess there isn't a particular. I mean, that was just one example. I didn't go looking for it, but the first one I found today was a young lady. So,
yes. Well, the reason I asked is because my father told me a story recently about he's a long distance truck driver, and he has two colleagues, one female, one male, who live in the car park.
all right.
One of the guys, aptly named Car Park Kev, who just lives in a van in the car park. And there's also a woman who lives in a van, but she's put plant pots and stuff outside her house to make it a bit more aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
And obviously she was found out to be doing this. That's not allowed, and was kicked out. And also meant that Car Park Kev also lost his because they found out he was doing it too.
Right.
So that's what I meant of, I felt as a functional thing, like he seemed to be getting away with it perhaps, but then she didn't. So kind of felt like maybe she needed more, if you know what I mean. Bit more space, bit more niceties.
I see what you mean. Okay,
So
yeah.
that's where that thing came from. That's why I was thinking that.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have seen quite a few men have done it, and they do tend to be more some dull-looking shack in the forest, as opposed to this Flo woman she'd upcycled everything she bought. You know, she found a beautiful door that she liked, but it was rotted on the bottom, so she sort of cut the bottom half off and got another door and turned it into like that sort of stable door style thing. And she had stained glass windows, not just normal ones made of polycarbonate. So yeah, everything was beautifully done. Everything was properly done. So I mean, I guess you're not trying to, most people, if you're doing it, the idea is not to try and deceive, because that's probably going to backfire anyway. So it's finding the right place. But probably what seems to be the best way of doing it, if you can, is to either have someone who has the land already, or like a farmer who's just not using a particular bit, who says, actually, you can live over there. Maybe you pay a little bit of rent towards them, and they're quite happy with that. So it is at the moment still who you know. Permission is not easy. There are a few sort of parks popping up from here in around. One's used for like homeless people. They started erecting little parks with lots of them on it, so that they had somewhere to live, which is quite a cool concept. But yeah, it's few and far between. And if you're going down the road, you're going to have to spend a fair bit of money on buying the land. Probably going to need to buy it without permission already on it. Converting it, but it is largely the same as getting a house, unfortunately. The benefit of having it on the back of a trailer, obviously, it is then classed as a mobile home, which does change things slightly, and it also has the added benefit that you can actually drive the thing. I mean, some people literally have a house and then drive it around. That's what they do.
Yeah, and the plan permission would be allowed as well, I believe, if you bought some land that didn't have residential rights. And let's say you was applying for those rights, you are allowed to live on that land in something that's movable, like a motorhome or a caravan, until you have those rights to build something permanent.
Yes.
So hypothetically, if you just wanted to live in a caravan, then just live in a caravan and you're perfectly fine.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the more I looked into it today, the more I sort of fell in love with the idea, really.
So when's it happening?
When's it happening?
When are you going to move?
Yeah, don't know. I mean, I did sort of as a theoretical approach, started looking at what land where could I go, and I found literally in terms of like not wanting to spend more than if you try and find some land that already has permission to build on it, you're looking at £200,000 just for that. So
yeah,
which goes almost to show you just how little the house is actually worth when you buy a house. You buy a plot for £200,000 is probably a reasonable amount. It's just the land. But yeah, I found like there was a commercial property, or it was previously had been used as a commercial property on a residential bit, and it was basically dilapidated, useless. The sort of thing you go in and just knock it down and put something new in. But a tiny house would fit quite nicely in this little space, and you still have a little bit of space for a garden if you wanted to, type thing. And that was selling for, I think it was 10,000.
Nice. So what? 35,000 sorted.
I mean, it's plausible. It is plausible. And then I found another one which was it was just like the like a woodland area on the edge of a residential place, and that was sort of, I can't remember what exactly it was, but somewhere between 10 and 20,000. But that's one that the sort of place where you, as you say, you could sort of move in your temporary mobile home while you apply for permission to build something more if you wanted to. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I like the idea more, a bit more woodland.
Yes.
And so
there we can, we can co-invest. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was actually as well.
I mean, maybe it's worth sharing with people who are listening and watching that we have been down this road before. We have looked at woodland before, and we did find some decent prices, only in Wales, but we did find some decent prices for a good couple of acres of woodland.
Yeah.
Again, there's no residential rights. You'd have to apply for those. But yeah, we did research this. We did look into it, and yeah, I think we were pretty close to going ahead with something, but
one day,
maybe realism got home, because I have a family, you have a son, so it's kind of, yeah, we could do it. Maybe they couldn't.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like there's going to be, someone's going to figure out how to make it so that people can rent a tiny house for the same amount of money they rent a normal house, because obviously you would expect to pay less, right? For the space. But I feel like someone's going to figure out how to go, right, well, actually, most people can spend a lot of people, £7,000 to £1,000 a month is quite common for most places, I think. I'm not sure about maybe different in Wales, but to put it in the 500 sort of 600 area, but just have it for longer, where you can ultimately buy the house, but just over, you're there for 5 years, 10 years even, on a monthly rate, and then if you do it for that long, eventually you will own the house, and then you can drive it away, take it somewhere else if you want to. I feel like that's a business model that will eventually arrive in the UK.
Yeah, that'd be very nice. Yeah, I suppose the laws are quite draconian still in how you can live on the land. I think Wales and Scotland are a bit more free compared to England.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're still very much locked down. You can't just live anywhere, which is a bit of a shame. I suppose America and Australia make sense, because, I mean, I'm not sure why tiny houses exist in Australia, because it's absolutely massive and so uninhabited. You could live anywhere and no one would probably ever know.
Well, the weird thing is, I quite often see them and they're not in, you think tiny houses are great for not really having got much space, but quite often see them on what seems to be very large plots of land out in the country. Type thing.
My tiny house on my 100 acres.
Yeah, it's weird. But I guess maybe it's just partly the filming. There certainly has been some people that go, well, that's my parents' house. And, we wanted our own space. So we live here at the end of the garden. Why not, I suppose. But again, as a starting point, maybe if you're young and your parents do have quite a large thing, but you want that independence, you might be able to do a little deal with your parents. Say, look, I'll live out in the garden for 12 months so I can save up some money and then
pay some rent.
Yeah, a feeling of living on my own and not living, but still having my own space, still being able to save money, and then move on.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a bit more of a somewhere now generation where I feel like I want to test myself a bit more and to live in a small, tiny home, not be plugged into the mains, have to get my own water, have to heat my home, have to figure out when I can watch the TV and use the kettle at the same time and figure those things out. Kind of, I don't know. I like the challenge of that. I mean, it'll definitely one of those things I imagine will probably get old fast, but you never know until you do it.
I quite like the challenge of it. I think for me, it's more. I am a bit of a sucker for a middle finger at convention, and just when you think about mortgages and how very bad. I mean, just the fact that you spend £350,000 on a £250,000 house, because that's how much interest costs, and it's like, well, but we're all brought up. Well, I know from being an '80s baby, that seems to be that's how it works. The ultimate goal is to own your own house. You ain't going to do that until about 60 years old. So what you do is you buy a house and then you just keep paying it every year, and you work in the same job every year, and then at some point you go, actually, that's not big enough now. I need another house. So then you carry on the process and you build it, and you do eventually you own the damn thing, and then your kids grow up and then they leave, and then you live stuck in a house that was too big, and then you think, no, I'm going to downsize it. That's generally what we all do, and it's like, well, it's almost like. And on the other hand, I was told, to never to try and stay with what you can afford. But yet, when it came to houses, we didn't follow that mentality. We always bought something that we definitely could not afford, in the hope that we would eventually buy it. So why don't we buy smaller houses, live in those, and then if you end up making way more money, fine, buy a bigger house if that's what you want. But buy it outright. Don't buy it before you can afford it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I think, same. Kind of grown up thinking of mortgages and student debt as not debt. They're kind of like separate entities. You're going to pay for your degree. Yeah, going to pay for your degree at uni. Yeah, that's not real debt. That's fine. Right. You got to pay that stuff back. But like mortgage, it's like, it's not really debt. It's 30 years, man. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's just a really big bit of debt.
But if you take that £100,000 house, right? The £100,000 interest that you lost over the period of your life, you lost £100,000. I mean, if we're being conservative, let's say we could put aside 5,000 a year. Is that too high? I don't know some people, obviously that's going to be 500, 1,000, whatever, but it just depends on where you are in your life and stuff. But let's say it's 5,000. Even that's 20 years worth of all your savings.
Yeah.
And you could have gone, well, that year I'm going to buy a solar PV thing. Then next year I'm going to buy. I don't know.
I mean, if you had 5K a year in a tiny house, I don't know. That feels exciting. Just like for Christmas, I'm going to buy myself. Yeah, I'm going to buy myself a new boiler. I want it.
Yeah. I mean, once you're in the thing, and your rent is, I was unable to find out, because it's not a very common thing. I couldn't find out an average sort of ground rent to pay. It does, like I said, it does seem to be who you know. But one would presume the cost of that would be very low.
I think it depends where you go. If you go to more residential places where they have caravans, lodges, camper vans allowed on site, you're looking at about 200, 250 quid. Basically, council tax plus 100 quid normally.
But is that places where you're also plugged in?
Yes. If you think of just on land itself, I suppose it's at completely discretion of the person who's there.
Because going off grid, if you need to be plugged in, obviously massively makes a difference. If you have to have plumbing put in for your gas and your water, compared to if you're able to have a off-grid system, you can literally, as long as you can find suitable usage of land, that you can go anywhere you like. So I might use the plumbing in system as a means to get myself to that point, but I would definitely be going off grid as soon as it was possible to do so, as soon as I could afford the system.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, I think water off grid is probably the easiest one, because especially in Britain, especially in Wales, where water is very plentiful right now. I mean, based on last week's chat, the water will dry up by 2030 and we're all dead, etc. That'll obviously get harder, but right now, very plentiful. Anywhere near a river, and you've basically an unlimited source of water for everything you need.
There are sometimes some regulations on taking water from a river, but can be. Anyway.
Yeah, not so much in Wales, I don't think. Maybe somewhere else. Depends, I suppose, where that river goes, where it's come from. Water I don't see as much of an issue. As you said, compost toilet is using water. Showers and stuff, I mean, I suppose you're going to be having a flannel wash, and
I mean, I like a shower. So I mean,
Would you get a gym membership?
Well, yes, you could. You could, again, it depends on the level. If you want to live out in the middle of the sticks, then you probably don't want to venture down to the gym to go and have a wash. But yeah, there's one system which is just basically essentially electric heated power shower thingy, which takes a couple of batteries. Ultimately, you just get a bucket of water at the bottom end. It does the rest. That girl Flo who had her own thing, she even, well, it wasn't about saving money actually. It was about headspace, because you've obviously haven't got hers. In her case, was underneath her bedroom, so she had a very limited headspace. She couldn't find a shower head that had a low enough profile for her to stand underneath it. So they literally got a copper pipe running along the top, and then they drilled holes in it. And it apparently, well, they showed it on the video. It works really well. Yeah, I will put the link to that YouTube channel and that particular video in case you want to watch that one at the bottom. Because
I do. So yeah,
inspiring. What these houses have done, it's amazing. And how they've reused the space as well. Like a step is a table, because it's like, well, if I'm eating, then I need a table. But if I'm going to bed, then I move the table and put the table away, and the table putting away happens to be a step, which gets me up to the bedroom. So it's just, when you think things through of what you actually need, there is an awful lot of stuff in your house which is like, when you're not using it, it's just a waste. I mean, I've talked about it before. Sofas that don't have storage in annoy me, because it's just like they're this massive thing that lives in your house, and its entire purpose is just to lift you off the floor and make you slightly comfortable. And yet all that space underneath your bum is not used. And then we have this permanent place that you can go to sleep, which, even in tiny houses, they often still do, but you only use it when you're knocked out and unconscious. Well, sometimes other things, but generally speaking, you don't use it most of the day. You only use it at nighttime. Like if it's those beds, but they can fold up and then become a desk or whatever. I just think it's cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the designs I've seen, I mean, even most of IKEA's things are very smart, and how they utilize small spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do really like the idea of it. Kind of envious that I'm not at a stage in my life where I can just go and do this.
I kind of could. I mean, like I said, as I've said many times, I live in a sort of, it sounds like a compliment every time I say it, but I live on the top floor. My amount of space I have is I haven't actually worked it out, but it's probably, it's bigger than a tiny house, but it's not much bigger than a tiny house. I have, in this small space, I have the bedroom, the lounge, office, and the bathroom. I don't have a kitchen, that sort of stuff, so that would be something I would fit in. But looking around, I could entirely imagine that I could fit in everything I needed in just a small space. So I think I'm going to sort of prove to myself, I'm going to make some changes to this room, I think, and prove to myself that I can definitely live in this space, if not smaller. I mean, just this room here, my first thought was, I'll put the sofa at the back, put the TV up on the wall, big open space, all very nice. But then I was like, well, when I'm sat down TV, I really don't need there to be a huge gap between me and the TV. What purpose does that really serve? Obviously, you don't want to be really close, but equally, I don't need to be that far. So I basically squished everything right down. So there's literally like a meter gap between me and the TV. Left all this space behind, which my son uses as a play area. So I've already done a few times here. What's out there is a hallway, which other people would probably just put on a side table or something. And I've gone, well, actually, no, I've put a full length desk all the way along it, so it's my office, but it's actually just a hallway to the staircase.
Yeah. I suppose you've got experience in this too, because in your last place, you practiced living in a small space where you lived in the living room.
I did. I had a very big size house, and I deliberately only used half of the space just to see what it was like. And I've also I have actually lived, not for I was probably about less than 6 months. I think might be about 3 or 4 months in a static caravan. I've had that experience too. And do you know what? It was very nice. I mean, you stayed in a static caravan, didn't you?
I mean, I would say millions of people every year choose to go to a static caravan on holidays. So I would say there's nothing wrong with that.
And I did it in winter as well, and it was fine. I was in the dead of winter, and it was. I mean, in place of that, I think that you had unlimited uses of the gas and stuff. So like we didn't even have trouble with that. We just kept the heating on if we needed it, type thing.
Yeah.
But I actually found that nice. Like it was, someone was cooking and you're sat in the lounge or whatever. It was kind of nicer than it is here, where everyone's in a different room. Someone's cooking in the kitchen on their own. It's actually slightly more had that community spirit thing of actually being in the same room, and I thought it was great.
Yeah, no, that'd be amazing.
So yeah. So that'd be my act if you suddenly go, oh, what's your background's changed? And I go, yes, this is my tiny house. You're currently.
I mean, please do it, because this sounds amazing, and I basically want to live my dreams of doing that through you.
Right. Okay.
So, because I can't do that, and I suppose a lot of people listening to this can't do it either, but they would love to. So, for those who do, I feel the same pain.
But there are a number of families that have done, not necessarily. I'm sure there are some houses that have done tiny houses, but even just smaller ones. Shipping container, or having 2 shipping containers side by side. You can still do a number of maybe you can't drive your house around with you, but in terms of owning a smaller plot of land, coming up with a different design that isn't bricks and mortar but uses shipping containers or whatever, you absolutely could do that.
Yeah.
So don't rule it out, Craig. It's not over for you.
Yeah. It is until the kids grow up, I think.
You reckon? It's that noise, isn't it? You can't cope with the idea of them being that close to you. They're not being.
Not so much the noise. I mean, the wife already complains this house is too small. I'm like, I spend most of my time in my office, which I would say is about 12 by 12.
Yeah. So
I could live in this space. I got a portable stove up here with a bit of gas that'll last me at least a year. I could live in here. Wow,
maybe you should try it for a week or something.
And I think, like, as you see in my office, I got glass windows here, so that makes this room feel 2-3 times the size it actually is.
Yeah,
and that really, really helps. So in a tiny house, if one of your walls was basically glass, it really wouldn't feel small.
As long as you could put shutters on them, so that you didn't.
Oh yeah, you need some sort of shutter system.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that was my topic. I might have got carried away more with the dream than I did with perhaps giving me enough information. So, but obviously, if you want to hear more about it, then I'm more than happy to answer your questions. Stop talking to you, Craig. I don't know if you have applies to you too. But if anyone else has any questions, I know planning permission is one I could go into a lot more depth, because there are lots of sort of weird things, but I don't want to confuse people too much. But if you have more questions on that one, then I will do my best to answer.
Yeah, and also it depends on the area you live. There's so many different rules. There was a book which I believe was recommended for people looking to do this. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a person who's got a plan permission book together of all the places, put your postcode in, and it tells you what you need to do.
Cool. If you can find that, you can show that in the link as well for that.
Cool. Yeah. Good dream. Please do it.
I'll get around to that. Okay. Right. Well, in that case, I think we're done. So, only left to say, other than throwing something across the room, is to remind everyone to think, educate, and act. And we'll catch you next time.
Yep. Goodbye.